making an MCP server that agents can actually use is pretty nuanced and ever-changing. And there's three main reasons why an MCP server might fail. One, there's too many tools, so the agent is getting tool paralysis, they don't know what to do. The tools that you do have lack examples and descriptions, so they don't know when or why to use a tool. And then finally, there's query-based tools without any context. So the agent doesn't know what workflow to use. They're just picking it up on the spot and kind of doing whatever. So tonight we're going to be talking about tool creation, we're going to be talking about workflows, and we're going to be talking about designing for AI. Woo! Yeah? That's what I like to hear. First up, we have a panel. We're going to be talking about what is MCP, where is it going, and what is the future of this. So we'll kick things off with moderating our panel. We have CEO and co-founder of Speakeasy, Sagar Bhatt.
Hey everyone, thanks a lot for coming. It's amazing to see this sort of cool. And thank you a lot to our panelists here today. Thank you for talking to us about MCP. It's amazing to see the ecosystem. So to kick things off, I wanted to Tadas, who's been doing some amazing work on the MCP steering committee. You go to the GitHub for MCP, he's all over it. I wanted him to give us a quick overview of the state of the what's happening right now, what's top of mind. You know, everyone here has heard of done something with MCP, but what's kind of his space?
Yeah, so state of MCP ecosystem. I feel like we recently got governance in place. Now we know how decisions are made, how specification changes are managed, and so on. So now we have this funnel for how to make improvements to it going. So it's a recent, I'd say, good win for the MCP ecosystem. I think a big thing we're trying to figure out is how to do things like get more clients to adopt features that are maybe often already in the MCP stack that server builders want to use, but there's this kind of chicken and egg problem going on between MCP servers adopting features and MCP clients adopting them on the other side. So there's a few of things going on. We just launched today, or yesterday, the MCP registry. So if anyone's been following along, it's been a long time coming, but it's out there now. And that's a foundational kind of building block to not solve, but empower the downstream solutions of discovery that I feel have, since MCP's inception, been a pain point for everybody involved. So yeah, I think in that there's already about 50 bucks filed for that, so we've got a lot of work to do, but that's the current state of things, and there's a lot more we can talk about. But yes, to make your server, get that bootstrap for us, solve that chicken and egg problem, the registry feed.
I guess just to double back on that, for people who didn't know, the official spec and the registry for MCP was launched yesterday. You can go submit your MCP server there. You can also retrieve information about servers on the registry. I guess a question back to us, why should people care about this? Because I could go search Google or Query and I'll have the MCP's hook a different product. Why should I go with it?
Yeah, so the way to talk about this official centralized registry is that it's actually the thing here is really for the target audience is for MCP server builders and MCP client builders as well. And it's not really, this is not the be-all end-all solution for MCP users. So it's really more for the builders here. And the reason I say that is because, and the problem it solves for builders is you build an MCP server and there's tons of different clients out there, there's tons of different MCP marketplaces. As a builder, you really want to just publish it to one place. You want to say, all right, it's my new version, new description, new way of installing it, let's put it out there. And then all those different distribution ideas should pick it up and go from there. You don't have to versus in a world where this doesn't exist, you have to go to pulsemcp.com to get your description updated, then you have to go to Smithery and update it as well. And this is a very fragmented ecosystem of like all the different places you're going to do this. So I'd say like that's a pain point itself for builders, for server builders, for client builders. You can install MCP servers using the instructions that are now centrally provided. You can run them, and that's how to solve for that. I still expect sub-registries like VS Code MC Marketplace, Smithery, also MCP to help solve the kind of downstream problem of how do we organize these, how do we curate these. So that's not going to change yet, but it enables those solutions to have a better kind of source of truth in that central element.
Turning to Sarah, I know Alloy launched a registry pretty recently. I'm curious how that experience has been and what motivated you to go out.
Yeah, so for context, Alloy is an API integration platform, so we already supported, I want to say 300 APIs, mostly to enterprise software, like Workday, Sage Intact, SAP. And so with those, I would say it was actually not super straightforward to this MCP registry because these APIs all have like 200 plus endpoints, and so we're still in the process of actually figuring out what makes sense to even have in these servers because a lot of these endpoints are almost too granular, right? Like for something like this, they have these endpoints just for updating certain fields. Same with like SAP. And so I think it's actually a really good chance for the system to rethink how a lot of APIs are built, obviously, because agents are consuming them. And so, yeah, a lot of these existing APIs that we supported, we just had to totally kind of be able to support in our registry.
That's super interesting. Something we've been saying at Speakeasy, when we help people understand MCP servers is kind of exactly what you said, where you'll take an API or some description, make an MCP server, something like 200 tools, that doesn't really make sense. An MCP server is kind of this missing step of curation. It sounds like that's a little bit more you're going after. That's super interesting. I think that's one of the things that people are getting wrong today with MCP is that often the server is built for a use case where it really isn't going to answer the question. It's kind of a set of front endpoints. But I think another big area that people are getting wrong is also securing those like in production. I wanted to ask Juliana a little bit about the challenges they're seeing in Stitch and how
So coming from the ops perspective, obviously security is going to be really top of mind, but I do think that is one of the sort of big barriers to, I think, sort of getting that flywheel going, and I think that's sort of like the end problem that needs to be solved. Like, how do you get all of the different clients, especially some of the web clients, to implement the same version of the spec and be able to integrate with your own MCP servers? How do you get all the enterprises that you're going to really want to connect to from those different interfaces, building MCP clients, and like really get the adoption going? I think right now we're just struggling with, there's a lot of like prototyping, and there's a lot of like, I think development happening in especially the dev tool space, but it hasn't really broken out too much from sort of the startup ecosystem. I think it's starting to. But I think the big key there is going to be on the security side, and I think there's a few things there. One is like obviously just navigating the authorization piece is challenging. People kind of had to think about that in the same sense. People are used to API keys for API authorization. An engineer goes and gets that API key, right, sets something up. That's very different than how MCP servers are going to be used, right? You're going to have end users that are connecting, so you need to have the OAuth set up for MCP. How do you figure that out? It's challenging. But beyond that, I think there's just a lot of kind of like loose ends to figure out in terms of things like context poisoning. That's still a really big issue. Our IT teams are just like terrified of that problem right now. I think figuring out how do we do client registration, DCR is sort of the standard right now. I think again, a lot of enterprises are just like scared about what that means. So I think there's a lot of these pieces, and then I think there's the challenge too of both it's awesome that there's so many people involved in contributing but also everyone has their own sort of perspective and what they want to see from it. And so how do we make sure that we're like getting alignment at the pace that we need to keep up with like how people want to be adopting it so that we don't sort of lose momentum there.
One of the things that really excites me about what Stitch is doing with MCP is that it's solving one of the critical things that you need for MCP, the enterprise authentication and then actually securing MCP. If you had to give folks like a really quick overview of what Stitch is doing and how it's solving that problem, what would it be?
Stitch. So Stitch is an auth platform, but you don't have to use us for authentication to do the sort of co-op setup that you need for MCP. We actually just launched today a basically standalone version of our connected apps product, which will turn any application into an OAuth compatible identity server, which is exactly what you need to do to build a remote MCP server. If you're using Stitch for auth, this is like dead simple. It's like a few lines of code. It's super easy. But oftentimes you might not want to migrate your entire authentication stack to us just to build a remote MCP server. So we can help out with that and get you sort of OAuth ready. So yeah, we'll have to chat if this is something that you're trying to navigate.
I think another kind of really important thing that you mentioned was there's a lot of parties involved in this ecosystem. We're trying to align on and make sure that people's understanding of MCP and how to use it is evolving at the same time. I think that's the other interesting advantage from there, being understanding really, being right there as you put out the integration stack. I'm kind of curious to understand what push and pull forces with MCP. How are you understanding line ultimately you want adoption, you want just more usage. What are those forces? What are the tensions in the world?
Yeah, I mean, I think there hasn't been any sort of drama or huge tensions. I feel like among the community. I think the creator David and Justin did a really good job of from the beginning being very hands off in terms of this is not Anthropic's thing. This is a community driven thing. It will be. David always says MCP is created by the people using it and contributing to it, and those are the people who have a voice. And they've done a really great job with that, involving people from the get-go as to across all kinds of different companies, and not just the large companies that are in the now core maintainer group. You have big companies like Microsoft, AWS, OpenAI, Anthropic. They're all represented in that core maintainer group. But then you also have a whole of the 30 to 40 non-core maintainers. You have everything from small startups like 2-person pulse MCP to mid-stage startups to other enterprises and so on. And because mostly David has driven this he's taking for the governance structure he adopted the BDFO model, and dictator for life. So it's all David, and even if he leaves Anthropic, he's still at the head of it. So now it's this it's just the only people involved are the individuals who really care about this piece of technology and what it means for the ecosystem. So it's actually you tell me if you see it differently from the outside, but I think there really is just a bunch of engineers who are really passionate about believing that this thing needs to exist, and people just try to make the right technical decisions at every step of the way, and very open to contributions, very open to people studying, and very self.
I think as an engineer too, I definitely believe that this technology needs to exist. There's a deep sense that this is filling a critical gap in the AI ecosystem today. I guess another question I have to ask, if there's a particular use case or example in the industry that you've seen recently that's really motivated you, what is it?
Well, I think, I don't know yet exactly how this is going to manifest, but from day one, the thing that got me really excited about MCP was this idea that you could save the internet economy. And what I mean by that is that, we were going through this phase, and for those of you following the Cloudflare pay-per-crawl mechanism and so on, that's been hitting the news cycle in the last couple of months. There's this upending of incentives that people used to create all this content on the internet for free, but now the AI labs are all scraping it, and so who's going to be able to make flips that narrative back to like the publisher or the owner of the service. Instead of being scraped, your website that was built for humans being scraped by bots, now you expose these tools, and these tools, you can program them to be executed in the way you can. If you want, you can serve ads. If you want, you can add affiliate links. If you want, you gate it behind off and charge for it for the service. It kind of saves if you have an MCP server instead of just like a website that anyone can access, I think that would be really compelling. We can talk more about like immediate use cases too, but I mean that's the motivation for me that I think in the long run I'm really excited about.
Sarah, you also built like a company, if I understand correctly, around this, or where there is a particular use case with MCP that you can monetize and also give a lot of value to these folks. I don't actually know if you're a stealth or not, so hopefully I'm not going to
No official launch, but you can look at my LinkedIn, it's kind of there. But the TLDR is AI native version of Slack, and there's quite a bit of tool quality there. For most knowledge workers, their version of IE is their communication tool. But in terms of use cases I'm excited about, I would say we're very lucky to live in Silicon Valley where we get these beautiful pieces of software built by developers who care. But most people outside of SF actually have to deal with these nasty pieces of software, like SAP, like I was saying before. And so I don't know if any of you have had to use any of these pieces of software, but it's a horrible experience. And so day in and day out, if you're using it, I actually think of MCP as a way to free the masses from bad software. I don't expect that a lot of these companies will reinvent themselves, but you can actually reinvent them from the outside and give these poor people a way to use that software in natural language. So those are the types of experiences I'm excited that MCP unlocks. And so kind of naturally, the type of interface I'm working on is very text-heavy, so it's cool.
Super cool. I hope there's no one with SAP here, or if they are, we're happy to help you. Many of us can help you with building it.
Maybe twice.
So as you mentioned, other kind of less motivational but day-to-day use cases, I'd love to share some of those.
Yeah, I mean, I think the place where MCP has like pretty clearly on fire is in the developer space, right? The software engineering space with all these agentic harnesses, agentic coding agents like Claude Code, Cursor, and so on. And I think an example of an MCP use case that I love, I really like the MCP use cases that close the loop per se, and I wrote a whole blog post about this if you want to check it out on the Pulse MCP blog. But the idea basically being that by pulling in context from these external services that you're already using, you can often empower a coding agent, other kinds of agents too, but most specifically a coding agent to basically check its own work in the same way that you might write a non-beta test, but in this case, close the loop with external systems. So, specific example, I use this one all the time internally. We have we use an observability platform for our website. It's called AppSignal. So we think of it as another Datadog. And then we also use a Slack alternative called Twist. And we have MCP servers hooked up to AppSignal and Twist. And so whenever we get an alert of some bug or something minor that went wrong, I will go into Claude Code, fire up those MCP servers, and tell it here's a link to our Twist thread that's ongoing that has this AppSignal alert. And I want you to assess what's going on by using AppSignal to search logs. By we also have Postgres MCP server hooked up. You can also check if there's data. If it's data related, you can also check the state of our database. It analyzes all that. It goes through this pretty long loop. Sometimes takes 10, 20, 30 minutes to go through checking all these things, and then also opens a PR on our code base. There's even I call it that ID file, a way for it to deploy the staging through GitHub. So it does this whole loop over and over again. It can keep checking itself. Oh, I just deployed this thing to staging. I can check an AppSignal whether the fix is working properly. And then finally it goes and says hey, 20 minutes later, I deployed this thing. I thought I fixed it. I didn't fix it, but now I did fix it, and now it's completely done. And I verified that by checking all your systems. So I think there's lots of use cases like that. You can close that loop and allow an agent to go over and over again, self-correcting itself until it gets an MCP is a huge enabler.
I think the closing the loop letting agents have where they data at the right point in time to unblock themselves, become more deterministic. For all the companies that released MCPs, especially the broad MCPs, I noticed Stitch has one, and one thing I noticed is you have a fantastic MCP page where you can go and actually quickly install it. I'm curious to hear use cases people have using the Stitch MCP and where you think that might go.
Want to shout out Max and Brandon who were here and built it, so if you want to talk to them after, go for it. So I think there's two main use cases right now. One is very selfish. I use it a bunch for setting up sales demos. It's amazing. It's saved me so much time because I used to have to go and set up new configurations. Obviously that's not the use case we're building it for necessarily, but I appreciate it. I think it's just so helpful when you're trying to navigate integrating a third party to have the MCP server there and cursor, whoever can talk to. I think we really struggled in the past with trying to get, the right context in docs so that cursor could understand how to use Stitch, and it just would hallucinate left and right, and it's really hard to figure out what's going wrong because it doesn't speak to your dashboard config, and debugging is really challenging. And so I think it helps solve sort of that feedback cycle like you guys were talking about in terms of understanding, okay, here's the error you're getting, here's what I'm seeing in your dashboard config, and here's how I'm gonna figure out how to solve it from there. So I think that's been awesome to see. But I am really excited for MCP to kind of break out of its DevTools use case. I think it's awesome. I love it. I use it every day. But I think there's so much more you can do, and this is integrated into platforms that are more accessible beyond sort of engineers. One just quick anecdote from doing a bunch of these sales demos. I've been using Cloud Code to just sort of show the MCP tool calling and show our OAuth integration and what that looks like for a remote MCP server. And half the time people are oh, it's so cool to see the live coding. And I was I just typed a sentence into Cloud Code. I wasn't live coding. But I do I don't know, get more sort of people using remote MCP servers. You're going to need to have web interfaces, right? Most people aren't going to Cloud Code or Cursor and setting this stuff up. So yeah, excited for ChatGPT, Claude, etc. to do even more there and build more servers.
Just to round this out, I'd love to hear from you if there's a particular industry, a vertical, product that you would love to have integrate into the world. And it doesn't have to be it could be anything you like. I'll go with that.
I think this is directly answering your question, but one thing I'm excited, there's been a lot of people talk about, a lot of companies working on AI-powered browsers. And I think they're not, my opinion is they're not going very well. And I think in the long run, MCP will solve that for the kind of things people expect from these AI-powered browsers. The way it'll solve it is that as more and more websites have an MCP server, this concept of being able to, you run a Google search and you have a bunch of results and you want to engage with 5 of the flight booking websites that are on the results, the agentic browser will be able to use MCP to talk to each of those. And so I think I'm really excited for a world in which more websites have a corresponding MCP server than they do not. And I think we're probably still another year or 2 away from that, but I think that the kind of general purpose use case of empowering the browsers in a way that they're not really working today.
My request is more far-fetched. I want an MCP server for Instagram, all the addictive apps, because I just want to know where people are, maybe what they're eating. So I don't want to open that app, so yeah, and way to just get text-based information on these Google apps.
A very boring, pragmatic answer. I really want a Slack MCP server. Every other tool we can integrate with, Notion, Linear, Google Drive, it's amazing. But we use Slack so much, and not being able to search through Slack is just so frustrating. So I also think that's maybe a moonshot because they seem very substantial anti opening up to data access like that, so fingers crossed that the tides turn there.
Mine is actually quite similar to yours. I have friends on WhatsApp, Signal, iMessage, and Slack, because they're going to work for friends, of course. And so just being able to understand what everyone is doing, and, where everyone is, are they online, whether it's a last message. It's a trivial use case, maybe also moonshot in some sense, but I kind of don't want to leave cloud code. I want to do all of that. So that's, well, I think we're almost out of time. So I wanted to just thank all the panelists for coming, sharing their experiences here. Definitely come talk to them, talk to me afterwards. We have a couple great demos. And with that, you heard it here first. Let's free ourselves from happy software.
Wonderful! Wow. Can you guys believe MCP is not even 1 year? And so it's really awesome to be having these conversations. Where we are, where's it going, especially from people that they've been in the space for a long time. They're basically pioneers since before. We'll go ahead and start setting up for our demo. And pulling in. We have 3 amazing lightning demos for you. We're going to be getting demos, MCP demos, from Speakeasy, README, and Curate. They're going to be 10 minutes each, and we'll have some room for questions at the end, so feel free to hold them. And if you don't get your question in, you can always talk to them after during the network like that.
All right, how are we doing? As said, I'm one of the founding engineers here at Speakeasy, and I have been working on Gram for the last some number of months. Right, so I think probably most of you know what MCP is, but always nice to have a refresher. Gram is basically a way at its core to provide context and capabilities that LLMs don't have inherently to them. Right, so here's a couple of typical use cases. Host your own public MCP. Build kind of native AI experiences into your product, and then power internal workflows. Speakeasy, I've called out here because this is something we do, and this is what I'm going to be using to do a demo of Gram today. This was talked about earlier as well, so I won't spend too much time on it. Here are some common issues with MCP, and naturally these are the things that Gram is trying to solve. In addition to, I think at its core, Gram just being kind of like the fastest way that I know anyway to like get up and running with remote MCP servers. Right. So let's just get into it. All right. Great. This is Gram. This is a brand new project, so I can just kind of show you. As I mentioned, the kind of core of this is how easy it is to get started. I've just uploaded the Speakeasy app and API, OpenAPI spec. This is just kind of stuff that we use to power like our internal retool dashboards, just sort of internal admin use cases. You can see we've already generated a bunch of tools based on this. Each of these tools is going to call out to our admin API. And now we can pick out a server slug that this is going to be hosted at, and there we go. We're done already. I'll now show that it works. This is the Gram playground, which is just a little embedded shout out for testing things out. You can see that it works. Here are some of our workspaces. I will clarify that I cheated just a little bit on this, in that obviously I how easy it is to get up and running. Oh, also something I'll show, we've got this like install page that's up and ready, so you can kind of like share this out to your customers or your teams, like how to get set up. This was actually partly inspired by Stitch, the Stitch MCP install page, so thank you. And yes, right, so let me move on. I'm just going to switch over to our actual internal project graph, which is a little more fleshed out. And you can see I've got a bunch of API documents, open API documents here, a bunch of different tool sets made. I've got this one set up already. You can see that it's got a handful of different tools, which are based on a handful of different APIs. We've got some Stripe tools. We've got these Speakeasy admin tools, which I had just kind of shown the creation of, and some HubSpot tools. These are kind of some of the SaaS stuff that we use internally. So, as the name suggests, this is kind of used by our go-to-market team to power some of their use cases. I have already connected to this in Cloud Code. Sorry, Cloud Desktop. You can see here are the same tools. And maybe I'll just quickly show kind of, as we touched on, one of the main issues with MCP today is kind of like tool size, tool confusion. You know, you kind of need to turn an API that has hundreds of endpoints into several different MCP servers that have, you know, only, as this warning suggests, under 40 tools. So, you can see, coming back here, we're able to just sort of like, trivially, let's just have this one. I'll refresh. You can see that my MCP server now has this tool added into it. So you can kind of like gather how this platform just kind of makes it easy to like trivially spin out, edit, manage your MCP servers. Right, so now let me try out the use case. I've got, as I said, a bunch of different things that are GTM uses. I'm going to try, let me set this down quick. So, that was one of our customers. Let's see how it does. The goal here is for this to not work, just so you know. And yeah, we're kind of seeing that it's struggling. You know, I've given it a relatively scoped MCP server, 32 tools, nothing crazy, but it's sort of, it's not really able to figure out exactly what I want it to do. So, let me switch over to this tab where I have pre-populated this. We have a concept called custom tools, which is basically a way to string together multiple API calls, multiple tools that are in your MCP server into one kind of set of instructions. So you can see that was like, you know, got me started quickly with a custom tool that is using HubSpot search companies to look up the company and then Stripe list charges to actually find the charges. This is basically what I wanted to do. I'm going to though come over to this one, which we have already built out and fleshed out a little more. And this was spawned from an actual use case we needed to figure out. You can see in this description, like it's pretty nuanced. This like information we need to provide it, or like how to specifically use the way that we have set up our HubSpot. If you're just kind of like using the tools out of the box, it's not going to know any of this. And then, I've added, we've set up a series of steps we needed to do, and as you can see, it's hitting across 3 different APIs. So let me just come back to my tool set and add that as a tool in there. And this. Make sure it made it to the server. So now it's just kind of another tool for the server like the other. Hopefully decides to use this tool. Looks like no. It's classic live demo. Rather than try again, I'll just find one where it did it correctly. Yes, here we go. So, I don't know, said the same thing. All those LLMs are right. So you can see that it got back like this sort of structured response explaining like what to do and what order and some specific instructions for how to use each tool. And then it went through and it used the correct tools in the correct order. And at the end of the day, in this example, it did transfer conversation. Was also not very good. There we go. Right. So, in the end, these things are still finicky, but ideally, you can imagine how these custom tools can help address some of the issues we've identified earlier in the panel with MCP. Kind of shaping your API, which is probably a little too granular for the way your users are actually talk about your product, talk about like taking actions in your product, and kind of like wrap them up into workflows and use cases that people actually are going to ask about that you want to see, hopefully get a higher success rate. Yeah, so I'll just talk about a couple other things. We support prompts. You can configure a prompt just as you might expect. We have some stuff coming soon. Everything I demoed, obviously, OpenAPI based, requires you to already have an API up and running. But we will have custom code support soon, so you can deploy kind of arbitrary code unattached to any particular API. And yeah, I think that about covers it. Oh, also we support OAuth as well. We've got an OAuth proxy for if your service supports CR. Just kind of hook into that natively. Yeah, I think I'm just at time. So, any questions from you? Thank you for listening. Yes, Mike.
In that custom tools flow, did you make the steps or
Yeah, so I did that quick little demo just to sort of show how we kind of like kickstart you by generating the steps, but then you can just sort of go in and move around, add steps. But yeah. What's up? That's right, yeah. So, I mean, really the generative part is like just sort of convenience, like, and to avoid it looking slate. But yeah, at the end of the day, you're going to need to be kind of like configuring everything. Thank you so much.
All right, give it up for Chase. Thank you. Next up, we have AI engineer at README, Anand Patel. He's going to be demonstrating on how to use README's MCP server to improve your API hooks.
let me start this one. Awesome. I'm from README. If you don't know about README, we are an API documentation platform. Basically, you go with an open API file, and we make beautiful docs out of it. We also have other features like guides, recipes, change logs, AI agents, but it's MCP night, so today we're talking about our MCP server. Right before this talk, I live coded an amazing pet store, which only has one endpoint, which is just putting a pet. And it only has 2 arguments, the name and the pet is done. And if we go to the code, very simple, but per request, you have the name and its adopted parameters, but let's add something new. One minute for these would be awesome. The cursor is focused on something. Now we have the check. Just like number, perfect, number. And yeah, let's set a weight limit because my apartment does not allow dogs that are more than 20. Cool. Let's save this. And now usually this is where I stop. Even though I do have some documentation, I usually forget. But luckily, with MPP's MCP server, I can pull up my agent right here in cursor, and I will update my docs based on my changes, and use them in the API. So hopefully, the demo guys are with me. It's going to plan all this out. So the first thing, we have all of our endpoints listed out in a tool call, so we don't overload the context window. So in order for the agent to know which API to call, it can search through our documentation to figure out which one to get. And here you can see that I got the correct one, which is the reference page. It's doing that, it's executing these requests, it's executing the get requests to get the current information. And what's the next one it does? It's patching our branches and the reference pages with the updated content. And if you don't believe me, we'll go back over here, refresh the page. Now you can see it added the weight right here in the documentation. And what else trying to do? It is also updating the open API file as well. And once that's done, it's thinking to get the right format. So it figures it out. Skip on to the next part. Stop that. Usually it would just, it updated the open API file right here to have the correct weight for the argument. And this would just need to get uploaded to our API. So next up, we can also do like update here. This one is to update our change log. So create change log and create. So now it's doing the same thing. It's figuring out which one to call and calling it. And executed it. So we go to our change log here. Ooh, new change log. Amazing. Alright. So next up, this is a small project, but how does this compare? How would this work in a larger project? So this is our actual documentation. So with README, you can see that it's a quick start page. This is our official documentation, and our documentation is stored in a Git repository. We have bidirectional sync, so if I make a change to Git, our documentation automatically gets updated. One cool thing about our API is we have a metrics API, which you can figure out what pages are the most popular, which ones have the most thumbs up, thumbs down. And so for here, let's try to improve our docs. So here we can find my best pages and create a style guide from it. Also make sure to reuse the README API. So right now it's looking at the documentation, endpoints. We have two different APIs. figured out all of our best performing pages, with the highest ratings, and the most views. And now it will do its AI magic and create a style guide. Since we're in the directory with all the documentation, I can actually just pull the documentation directly. So it doesn't have to call the API, but if we didn't have it, we would use the API to call and get those files as well. Now it's creating a style guide. While that's running, next one. Now we have an amazing style guide for people to use in the future to make sure our docs are awesome. Let's check it out. So it tells us what pages it was developed from. It says, make sure the title is clear, descriptive, make sure the text is concise. Cool. Now let's take this to the next level and let's find our worst performing pages and update them using the style guide. And I can point to the style guide for this page. Now I'll do the same thing, except we have an API to also get the worst pages that are on your website, and hopefully it will update the docs. And boom, it found a bunch of things that have 0% positive on our docs. But obviously, we're always improving our documentation. So, it's reading, identified problems, and now it goes to end up. But here, this one didn't actually have the description, so it added a nice one, and an icon, just like the style I was saying. Yeah, so now we can convert this to an agent maybe, like every day or every week, new pages coming out. We can run this as a GitHub actions, continuously make PRs, keep our documentation. And that is all I have.
I'm just curious about the full types of hallucinations you guys see as updating documentation. What are specific tools you want to apply? You guys have an understanding of why?
Yeah, so for hallucinations, our API just calls your actual docs. So it's very low because we're actually pasting, whenever it's getting the request, it actually gets the real data from the docs inside of the context window. So that reduces the hallucinations. Obviously, you can't stop all of them, but especially with bigger projects when you're doing a lot of, there's like indirect references. Usually, clients bring in the right files, but there are some times where you have to like, look at it and make sure that it's what you want the docs to be. But we try, the main point to avoid hallucinations is we try to add the actual files and the actual documentation inside the context window. So it has like all the information it can.
You guys working around context engineering solutions in particular with the context window. Sometimes it looks a bit
Yeah, so we do have a bunch of customers that have like gigantic Max pages. And how we have an agent-to-agent interaction there, where we have a agent on our side called Albot, and that will basically go through its typical RAG kind of infrastructure, but it'll also cut off it'll summarize the information that you need based on the input that the user is asking for. And so it'll run that, it'll run a RAG search, it'll condense that information to kind of attempt to answer the user's question, and that's what the MCP server will return. So it can keep your context in it.
All right, then thank you so much, Anon. One more amazing lightning demo for us for this end of this before we get into our networking. Welcome to the stage, software engineer and clerk, Ben Werner. He's going to be talking about how to authenticate your MCP server using Twitter.
Hello, my name is Ben. I work at Clerk. I'm here with my my coworker Karthik. And has anybody used Clerk before? No. Oh yes. So has anybody used Next.js? All right, hell yeah. So Clerk, when you build your Next.js app, you need to, authenticate the app, and Clerk, we build a lot of tooling to allow you to do that. I'm going to go pretty quickly here because I'm going to try to vibe code this. Okay, so I have a really basic counter app here, and I've been experimenting with convex. Let's go to localhost. Hopefully this works. Okay, so I have a convex counter. I forked this, and in my convex database, I have a value, and I can increment the counter. But we need to log in. It's important. Who am I? I need to log in. So I'm going to ask Clerk to do this. Basically, just going to integrate Clerk with Next.js, and hopefully this works. If it doesn't, that won't be good. Cool. So this would be Clerk. While it's doing that, it might take a bit. It's a user management platform, so you don't have to set up any of your auth. And one of the things we do if you use Clerk is we give you an OAuth server. So to authenticate MCP, the spec wants us to use OAuth. And it's a bit controversial, especially with the dynamic client registration, but this is what we want to do. And once you use Clerk, we give you an OAuth server that's compatible with the MCP specs. So let's see where we're at with integrating Clerk. Oh my God, it's still going. Okay, if this doesn't work, I have some branches. Okay. It's doing a TypeScript config. All right, I think I'm gonna stop vibe coding just for a second. I'll continue vibe coding. Come on. Yeah, still figuring out what list to tackle. All right, okay, it has a list. So I'll move on to the MCP integration. I'm just gonna look up the MCP docs real quick. So if you're using Clerk for authentication, it's pretty simple to add an MCP server. We have a guide here. We give you some SDKs. You implement the SDKs. You implement a route. You add a handler. We're using Vercel in this example, but I think we have some other integrations. All right, I think I'm giving up. Okay, we're going. All right, so to integrate Clerk with your app, you have to add a Clerk provider. So if you're familiar with Next.js, you just add this around your app. It's basically one line of code. You have to install the Clerk SDK as well. All right, I'm giving up. Sorry, guys. It's taking too long. All right. So, all right, let me discard this. All right. Sorry, guys. Give me a second. All right. All right. That should work. All right, so it's a counter. So there should be a counter in a second. If this will load, come on, man. Oh, I know what I did. I know exactly what this is. So this is a TypeScript thing. Hold on. Counter. No value. Value is 0. So this is sorry. All right, there we go. ChatGPT. It doesn't. All right. Let me go. Come on. All right. So we have a counter, and we should be logged into Clerk already. But to show you what it would look like, here. Oh no, guess not. Okay, so I'm not logged in. All right, I'm going to show you this MCP server because this the vibe coding is not working. So the MCP server is pretty simple. All right, let's go back to here. So if you have the counter, we provide you. Let me install. Okay, so we provide you in the SDK a create MCP handler, and you can define tools. So as you can see, there's a user ID. we do a lot of weird stuff with OAuth. Again, there's a weird thing with OAuth with MCP, but we handle that all for you, and then you're able to access that when you're coming up with your MCP servers or your tools. So, for example, here is a tool where you can increment the counter. It's very useful to increment counters through AI. So you can get, we give you the user ID, and then you can, if you're using SQL, you can do a where clause or whatever, and then return it. So it's not too much, and then now I'll show you what how to add that. So if we go back to the docs here, hold on. All right. You don't actually have to. You add this. You just add like with Cursor, you can add an MCP server with a URL. With Claude Code, you can just add it with a command. Postman, I'll also show you what that looks like. But the point is that with Claude Code, you can just add an MCP server. Oh, I already have it in there. Let me remove it. Okay. All right, so this should be familiar to you if you've used Claude Code. Come on. All right, so we have I already connected it, but I will clear the authentication. Let me do this again. Okay. Now, all right. So when you add the MCP server, like this OAuth server that goes through the flow, because you're using Clerk, we give this to you for free, and then you're able to log in. So this is authentication successful using Claude Code, and then now I could ask it to increment my counter. Hopefully, yeah, so it knows what tool calls to do. Because you've defined the tools here, the MCP spec, Claude knows to pull down what tools you have, and it knows that we can increment a counter. So we're going to increment the counter. And then, as you can see, I incremented it by 10, and now we're at 15. If I do it again, it should save because it's using a database. Yes, should be 25. There we go. So we're at 25, and that's basically it. We give you this MCP server. It's using localhost, but obviously if you were to host it yourself, it would you would host it on whatever your domain is. But you just create the tools right through here, and you have access to your user data, so you could perform the queries. Any other questions?
So when you use this on Clerk and it's pointing to your domain, do you still have to use custom Clerk MCP server code, or can you just point to the URL/MCP and then it just can use your website?
Yeah. So the way that so when you set up the MCP server, you actually use this you create a well-known on your server. So the well-known is how the MCP server, or actually how the MCP client knows what the MCP server is, what endpoints to hit, how the OAuth flow should behave, and we host that on Clerk. So we have an API that you would use, but on your website, you would just forward, if you're using def.com or whatever. You would just forward it to the Clerk APIs. But you won't see this. It's all hidden in the SDKs.
So, quick follow-up. Is this repo going to be on GitHub?
Well, you don't want to be on GitHub. But this particular one is not very good. But yes, we have a few examples. So if you type in Clerk MCP example, there's something that's not completely vibe coded, but it's it's the same thing. The big thing is if this, and we also have a quick start as well, but the where is it? Yeah, so that's not it. We have these two quick starts to build an MCP server and connect to MCP client, but we have an example if you just Google it. You can also ask on the Discord. I'm around, so I can show you. Any other questions?
All right, thank you. Woo! Thank you everyone for being here. We've kind of gone through our big performance of the night, and now we get to have the big conversations. I want to know what you learned, what you're interested in, Chase